In 2022, I made my first dress, and I think I made like one other thing, but I went into 2023 basically having a very sketchy internet-based understanding of sewing. I started sewing on a child's sewing machine, and then I upgraded to an adult one just over a year ago. And the reason I've taken an interest in this hobby slash just life skill, in the same way that cooking for yourself, I don't really count it as a hobby, or gardening if you have a garden. They are kind of hobbies, but they're also just things that you do to maintain the stuff that you have. And clothes are a big part of the responsibility I have to myself and to clothing myself so I don't get arrested for being naked in situations that is apparently illegal to be naked in. The reason I'm so interested in this is that it has intersected with a personal but widely as well societal reckoning with the knowledge we have now about how our clothes are made. Not only the ethical awakening of phenomenons like the True Cost documentary, resources like Good on You, and the horrible news coverage of factory collapses and the like within the supply chains that we a part of, but also because of the whole we're producing 80 billion bits of clothes a year, and that is wacky. Clothes that apparently aren't sparking joy because we're literally throwing them away. I think that having a wardrobe should be a joyous and gumption-filled experience, and I don't feel like that is what is happening for anyone in this scenario. So I'm on a journey to try and find that joy again, and clothes, the making of them, however bargain bin and rough and ready, is something that I'm really enjoying. So please, even if you don't think a sewing machine or a pair of knitting needles is in your far-flung future, I hope you'll enjoy a cozy little chat and a little insight into what is in these clothes. How are they constructed? What's going on? It might help you imagine how to mend your clothes, how to pick clothes that last, or what styles you prefer and how to describe them. Or even imagine one day having an anti-capitalist wardrobe that you're proud of, that you love, and you don't want to throw away. That's the future I am trying to wiggle towards with the resources that I have. Now, I've made 17 items so far this year, so another reason that I'm making this video in the beginning of the year is because if we wait to the end of the year, this video is going to be like 2 hours long. Without further ado, we shall begin. And the beginning of this list starts with a heavy emphasis on knitting, mainly because I taught myself to knit on Boxing Day, and also because that kind of coincided with the fact that my sewing machine needed servicing and it was kind of broken. In the end, I had to wait about 6 weeks for the sewing shop I dropped it off to reopen, the man that fixes sewing machines to have time to come and collect it and then fix it and then return it. So in that time, I kind of got hooked on my mistress knitting. But in the very last few days before it gave up the ghost, the last few days of 2022, I made 2 tops, which I'm going to include in this roundup because otherwise they'll be forgotten forever. So the 2 tops I made in the last very few days of 2022. The first one was this brown gathered strappy top. I'd never done a gathered top before. I made my own bias binding, which is the straps and the neckline. That's all made out of bias binding. And I made it using this book I swear by, DIY Daisies, Sew It Yourself. It is the Hollie top, and what's magic about this book is it actually doesn't use patterns. It just uses squares and rectangles that you can measure from your own body measurements. So the top is literally just made out of 2 rectangles and some binding. I love this top. Those of you who know that I'm leaning into my colour analysis era will know that I'm trying to embrace the brown, and I really, really love the colour and the pattern. The things that I regret about this top is that, one, it's made out of a quilting cotton, which I didn't realise was thick and kind of off limits for making clothes out of, just because of the thickness and the way it drapes. It's not very comfortable at all. And admittedly, I did buy it in a quilting shop. So should have seen that coming. But I was listening to a podcast called Love to Sew, and they were laughing about how it's an initiation that when a new sewer comes to sewing, they often try and sew with quilting fabrics because they're in denial about how suitable they are for clothes. And I felt very called out and seen by that comment. But I do really enjoy this top, and it's really nice to tuck into things. The straps are very scrappy if you get up close, but they are straps, and they do hold themselves up enough to cover the boobage. So that is really the point of a strap. It's not to look pretty. So it's fine. The second top I made is from this very structured black fabric that was actually some scrap fabric I had lying around. It was sold with some backing poles I bought a long time ago as a backdrop sheet sheet that you should use for filming videos with. But instead, I thought I'll make a top out of that. I chose the peplum top, say that 10 times fast, peplum top, from the DIY Daisy book. And while this was a super fun top to make and quite straightforward, and also is double-sided fabric around the boobs, so you can totally wear it without a bra and it won't be see-through. I also didn't realize how key the gathering part of the fabric was to the way the top would sit on your boobs, and turns out using incredibly coarse, stiff black fabric for this quite flowy top didn't really work out for me. It's also now not the right size for me either. So I really enjoyed the process of this top, but it's honestly one I'm probably not going to wear that much. I'm calling it more of a learning exercise, no harm, no foul, used scrap fabric, nothing was lost, but not my best. Not my best. I would, however, like to try this pattern again in a more flowy fabric because I really like how it looks on everybody else's Instagram feeds and in the models in the books. So maybe I'll make it in dress form next time. Me made item number 3 is my very first scarf. You can watch the whole process of me learning how to knit this scarf that was technically supposed to be a beanie hat. Up here, it's one of my videos from a while ago, and this scarf was the making of me. That's what you need to know. This scarf was the making of me. It had a very sorry but kind of hopeful end that I'll get into later. She was here for a good time, but not a long time. And I really love the colour of this scarf. It's completely just, there's no pattern. It's literally just a long rectangle that I sewed into a continuous circle scarf. And the wool is bronzed olive from Wool and the Gang. Number 4 and 5 come as a pair because they're made out of the same wool. I bought some super chunky wool in the colour Funfetti, such a good name. And I use these scarves just to keep practicing knitting, to learn what the hell I was doing and what things looked like when I knitted them. That's sometimes where you have to start when you're learning how to make something. You just have to keep doing it and then working out what it looks like when you do certain things. These are 2 circle scarves, one from my friend Ariel and one from my friend Sophie. They're 100% wool, so they're going to be super warm. Ariel lives in the depths of Canada, so needs it, and Sophie has a dog that she takes on very, very cold dog walks all the time along the Thames in the punishing, whipping wind of London winter. So they both found more than loving homes, and I really enjoyed making them with those people in mind as well. That was quite sweet. The next one was a similar scarf I made for Craig. It was in a slightly different colour. This was literally just one to wear around the house because he gets so cold because he's a bit of a slim bean. And I learned from that, because it's a bit more shallow, I need to learn how to finish things so they stay up. This kept curling on him and really annoying him, which is totally fair because it was just something that, it was a pattern that I made up. But hey, it's also very soft and very warm, so we can't complain. Number 7 was another kind of fail. Are we seeing a pattern at the beginning of my journey? This is another attempt at the beanie I thought I was making when I started my knitting journey. It's the Hands Up hat by Wool and the Gang, and I used some scrap wool I had. The wool was of various sizes from various places, and not the size that the hat was designed to be knit in, which is why, I mean, insert your insulting quip here, because it looks like so many things, none of them being a hat, but it exists and it is very, very warm. So there's that. I might frog it at some point. But then marches in another pair of gifts. I made 2 scarves for my friends Hannah and Lucy for their birthdays. Hannah's is made of a more drapey, soft wool, and in a rainbow colour. There's this indie brand based in Devon called Lauren Ashton, and they do scrap boxes of like samples of their wool, basically just like zero waste packs where any like ends of their yarns they put together in a little rainbow bundle for you. So I bought one of those and I made Hannah's scarf pretty much all out of that. It's from a pattern I found on the internet called the bandana cowl scarf, and it's cool because it kind of looks like armor. It like circles your chin, but then it comes down in a V shape around your neck so you can tuck it into your coat or whatever. I really think that's cool and I want to make myself one at some point. And I made Lucy an identical one, but it turned out to be way more massive and way heavier because I used this yarn. Yes, I have a little knitting and sewing notebook where I make all my notes. Okay, cool. Stop staring. It's called Drops Polaris Mix, and I used 300 grams of wool that she's carrying around on her neck, which, if you know about knitting, that's quite a lot of wool. So R.I.P. Lucy. I wanted to make something neutral and classy, but I may have just literally given her an albatross to wear around her neck, but we live, we laugh, we learn. Number 10 was for basically my nephew, my friend's child who I love. I wanted to make him something, and I also wanted to make friends with the woman at this market I was at who was selling wool. So I bought one ball of wool from her, and she gave me like a little printed out sheet of how to make the hat from the wool. And I thought that was really sweet. So I did the child-sized one, and he seemed really happy with it. He's 3 years old, so his experience with hats is limited, which is why maybe the reviews were so good. He's apparently very much enjoying it. And I don't know if you've ever experienced, almost especially as a happily child-free person, the genuine joy from giving a child something that they actually want and you have made. But it's electric. I'm addicted. I'm going to do it. I'll do it again. I will. This pattern was just literally printed out on somebody's home computer, and to be honest, it wasn't the best pattern ever, so I don't even know what it was because I don't know if I kept it. But it did make a hat. The hat exists. The hat was hatting. Number 11 is a happy tale because I finally successfully made the hat I'd started my knitting career trying to make, and that is the Hands Up hat by Wool and the Gang. I made it for Craig. He chose the colour. He was very excited. However, I cut corners on wool. I bought cheaper wool. And while it's very pretty and it's very nice, it's also incredibly itchy. And for those of you who don't know, Craig is a bold king, and itchy hats is annoying for me, but absolutely insufferable for him. So this hat is admittedly something that I wear more than him. I think I might line it at some point for him, or maybe just re-knit it in a softer wool. I'll leave the name of the wool that I used below in case you also want to avoid it for hats, but it is quite affordable. So if you want to make coasters out of it, go ham. However, when it comes to the consistency of the knit and the form of the hat and the fact that I actually finally made it and I understood the pattern, growth, pure growth. I'm actually really proud of that hat. Number 12. Now we're getting into the real journeys, the real pilgrimages. This is my heart cardigan. I made it and I recorded the whole process on Instagram stories. So if you want to watch 8 weeks of jubilation and anguish, then you can go to my highlights on my Instagram and watch the whole thing. I made this out of the same olive bronzed wool that I had from Wool and the Gang. I bought more of it because I really loved the colour and I'd love something else in it. It's the first knitted bit of clothing I've ever made, and it's an assembly thing, so you have to make basically 5 pieces and knit them together. So much of it I had to redo, so much of it boggled my brain. It did give me an opportunity to frog, which for those not initiated into the weird world of the knitting community, frogging means when you rip a knitted piece apart, like from the yarn, just unraveling it all. And it's called frogging because you rip it. Anyway, I frogged my first ever scarf and made it into the sleeve of my first ever cardigan. That felt some way symbolic and also a little bit less wasteful, so I enjoyed it. I also toyed with adding loads and loads of hearts to this cardigan because I just learned how to make hearts with knitting needles and I was excited about it. But in the end, I just settled for having 2 pink hearts on either side of the lapels, and I really like this. It doesn't fit amazingly because the armholes weren't graded for different sizes, so it's actually kind of tight around my armpits, which is annoying. But had I been in any way an experienced knitter, I would have been able to change that while I was making it. I just didn't know. And also the makers of that pattern, Lauren Ashton, have said, oh yeah, we should probably grade our arms, and I was like, yes please. So I think they are changing the pattern in future as well. The power of being a micro influencer with a vaguely small but notable following on the internet, I guess. When you post about things, people are like, oh, we actually might change that. But no, for real, I really love Lauren Ashton patterns and I've been using them for other things, and I genuinely think they're really good, and I've actually bought a few of them because of stuff that I'm planning to make in the future. So I actually found, as a vigorous, violent beginner, this really easy to follow. And if you are thinking about making your first knitted item, I genuinely really recommend them. And also their wool is the wool that doesn't itch. Theirs is that's the wool you need to use. It's so good. Number 13, next is a dress that is the fruits of many hours of vintage scrolling labour. Every now and then, somebody, somewhere, buys a 100% linen duvet cover, takes it home, waits for the return date to expire, and then thinks, I actually don't want to go with green. I don't want this. And they put it on Vinted for like £18, which if you've ever bought linen by the metre is absolutely batty. But I took full advantage and I have so much green linen fabric now. And the first thing I wanted to make was to revisit the pattern that I got from this book, make the Hollie high neck top, but in a dress form, which basically just meant me elongating the pattern. So it was in a column and longer. I didn't do anything else to the pattern. I literally just made it longer. Without a belt, this dress kind of looks like a sack, but I kind of love it. I also gave it a slit, which I'd never done before, so that was saucy and exciting. And I also committed a hate crime because I didn't give myself pockets, which makes me think, actually, am I the problem? Do I hate myself? So I might go back at some point and give myself pockets, but it's genuinely something that didn't occur to me. And for that, I think, wow, the patriarchy got me good. Anyway, I love this pattern. I think it is really simple to sew up if you've got some basic sewing skills. It's very flowy, it's very airy. I like that the straps are tie so you can adjust them. Initially, I thought I was going to add ruffles to this dress, but as soon as I tried it on, I realised for some reason, what's going on? Who am I? Liked the quite simple classic silhouette and didn't want to add ruffles to it. So I followed my instincts. I don't know if they were correct, but this is a perfect, breathable, zero waste dress. And I've already got loads and loads of wear out of it. Number 14, back to the casualties. This is a hat I knitted with the same pattern as all the other hats I've knitted, the Hands Up hat from Wool and the Gang, but I used Lauren Ashton Designs wool. And instead of looking like this, it looks like this. I don't know why. This is supposed to be a present for a friend, but not a worm friend, not a snake friend, just a friend with a normal sized head. So I'm going to frog it and reknit it with a Lauren Ashton Designs pattern, because we've learned now that just because two yarns look the same, they do not act the same, and they are not in fact the same length or weight. But this hat is purely a product of my ignorance, and again, we're showcasing the journey. I also feel like knitting really relaxes me and sorts me out mentally and helps me focus when I'm talking to people or watching a film or on a train, and I feel like anything I knit that doesn't actually end up being wearable isn't a complete waste of time because of the innumerable benefits on my MH. Then we've got the purple jumper. If you want to see the whole story of the purple jumper, it's up here. Watch it after this video because I really enjoyed making it. I recorded the whole process of making my first jumper. Here it is in all its glory. It again fell casualty to my ignorance around not finding adequate wool dupes for certain patterns, but I still think it looks pretty incredible. It cost me way more to make than I was predicting, but also way less than actually paying somebody to knit a jumper in ethical conditions at a reasonable price. I'd love to knit this pattern again because it's a huge fave. I'd like to knit a cropped version in a different colour, maybe a multicoloured one, I don't know, but you can buy this pattern for £5 and I'll leave the link below, but it's really, I definitely think the pattern is a winner and I'm super happy with how that turned out in the end, and I had a lot of fun making it. There's also that, it was just fun. Some things are functional and fun. Number 16 was the dress. I think this is my favourite thing I've made so far, to be honest. I found this fabric in a shop in Amsterdam when I was on holiday. I love the idea, instead of buying like a plastic shitty souvenir or something I'm never going to use again, I buy fabric that I bring home, and then the clothing item becomes the souvenir or the memory of that nice trip, especially because it's usually fabric that isn't available near me. Unlike a lot of souvenirs I used to buy that I was like, I'm pretty sure my Sainsbury's has this. So I found this beautiful marble fabric. I will leave the details to any fabric I have below if you do want to try and seek it out, but I don't know where else to get it apart from this beautiful shop in Amsterdam. I used just under 3 meters to make this dress, and it is still, wait for it, all just made out of rectangles. This is the Maya ruffle dress. It's exactly the same pattern I used to make my first ever dress, the All Sorts dress, but with a few modifications from me because I was feeling saucy. I was starting to feel confident in my sewing journey. So I added an extra ruffle at the bottom. I gathered the end of the sleeves to make them balloon sleeves. Another thing I've never done was like gather a sleeve and put some elastic in it. That was very exciting. In my little sewing notebook, I stick a scrap of the fabric that I've used for the piece, and then I make all my measurements and calculations in the notebook, but then I also have little notes at the end of what I wish I'd known or what I'd done for the first time during this project. And I added, wait for it, leopard print pockets. I know. I used to have this flowy old pair of leopard print palazzo pants that were originally from H&M, but super poor quality and really deteriorated every time I washed them. They were really getting to the end of their life, but I had so many nice memories of them, and they were also super soft because I'd worn them in so much. So I've cut them up and I've started using them as pockets and like little linings and things because it's a nice memory. It's a nice fabric for me to see, even if it's quite worn and bubbly for anybody else. And I love this touch. I think that's my favourite thing about the dress, is these little leopard print surprise pockets. The one thing I really screwed up with this dress was the neckline. I don't know what I was thinking, but for some reason, once I did it, I couldn't get it over my head, and then I snipped it by accident, so I couldn't make the circular width like good. So I ended up turning it into a bit of a V-neck, but then I kind of hated the V-neck, so now it's kind of reversible where I could wear it as a V-neck, but I don't really like it as a V-neck. So what I'm trying to say is I wear it backwards. It does push on my neck a little bit, and I should go back and like unpick all the bias binding and make it a little bit more dipped here so it's more comfortable to wear. But essentially what's happening is I'm wearing it backwards, and I don't care. When you make a dress out of squares and rectangles, nobody can tell. And then finally, final answer, I made this dress I'm wearing right now. I found this fabric in a small shop in Worcester. I was going to see Seth Lakeman in concert in Worcester because that's the closest he was coming to me, and I'm very cool. We must remember that. And they only had a metre left of this fabric, but I had to have it. And I would have loved to have made a whole dress out of it, but I'm actually kind of glad that I couldn't, because it enabled me to make this kind of colour block moment with the stiff fabric that I'd made from that first black top I made. Do you remember? It didn't work because it wasn't drapey and it was too stiff. I realised that I could use the stiffness to make some statement shoulders, and I love it. The body is from the Grace dress by McCall's. It was the second time I've ever used like a sewing pattern, and they're kind of a pain in the ass, but they kind of are also really good, but also definitely have their plus sides. But because I've been learning just by cutting out rectangles, I feel like patterns seems like a faff from over here. So I made the bodice out of that pattern, but then I just went back to my old Maya Ruffle DIY Daisy ways for the rest of the dress. I just used those instructions to make the skirt and the sleeves. I lined the sleeves. Stop it. I know. Look at what I know. So when I turn sideways, you get a glimpse of the inner fabric. In my initial sketch, I really wanted to put patch pockets on as well, but they ended up being tragically small because I didn't have as much fabric as I thought I did, and they looked a bit weird. So I've left the pockets off for now, sadly. Another day without pockets. But it was my second time ever doing facing for a neckline, which is what reinforces it and makes it structured and strong. And my first time doing a slit in the back with a little butterfly clasp. That was very exciting too. The gathering on this dress is so shoddy, very uneven. Don't come too close. But I don't think it really makes a difference to the overall look or feel of the dress, and you'd only know if you're also somebody who sewed their own clothes and was looking for it. So I do want to practice my gathering because that's a feature. By the way, gathering is just like when something goes from it's kind of like osmosis. When something goes from a wide amount of fabric to a small amount of fabric and creates a kind of floof, a ruffle, usually that effect is made by gathering. Not always, but a lot of the time it's made by gathering. And gathering's a really fun thing to have on clothes, so I would like to get better at it. This dress reminded me that I'm not good at it, but I also had the brainwave of doing my gathering stitches, which you do eventually have to pick out, by the way. You have to put them all in and then pick them out again. I did my gathering stitches in like a luminous yellow and orange, so that I could see them really easily when I was picking them out. So that made me feel smug. I have a few other things already in the works that I'm excited to show you at some point. The best way to see stuff early is to follow me on Instagram at LenaNorms, so make sure you do that. I hope you enjoyed this. I just wanted to chat through my progress. If you are somebody who's thinking about having a more hands-on relationship with your wardrobe, I hope this was at least encouraging in that failure is inevitable, but doesn't necessarily strip the joy out of it. This video was made possible by the Gumption Club, who tip me per video to make sure these videos keep happening, and in exchange we have like about 1 million different Facebook subgroups and main groups where we chat. I also do a weekly podcast where I talk about what I'm thinking about, what I'm watching, what I'm reading, and often what I'm making. So if you like seeing alternative, less wasteful, more joyful fashion content, and you got some pennies spare every month to buy me what is the equivalent of a very small coffee, then I'll leave the links to that below. All that remains to be said is if you enjoyed this video, I bet you'll like one of these videos, particularly this one. This one is Lies to Unlearn about making your own clothes. I think that'd be a really great place to start if you are curious about what I'm doing here. All that remains to say is frog snog out, or unravel out, I guess. See you soon.